My boss insisted I work late every night. One evening, I forgot my keys and went back to the office, only to find my husband and my boss locked in a passionate kiss. Stunned, I whispered, "So this is why you never pick me up anymore." They turned pale. My boss stammered, "This won't affect your job." I laughed, "Oh, it will. But not the way you think." The next morning, HR called them both in, for a conversation they never saw coming. This happened just a few months ago. I, 34 female, live in Chicago, and I've been married to my husband, Daniel, 36 male, for 8 years. We met in college, got married in our late 20s, and for the most part, I thought we were solid. We both have careers, no kids, a mortgage, and what I assumed was a partnership built on trust. I work for a medium-sized marketing firm downtown. It's not a startup, but it's fast-paced and client-heavy. About 6 months ago, things started to get intense at work. My manager, let's call him Mr. Harris, mid-40s, very polished type, began assigning me bigger projects, tighter deadlines, more responsibility. At first, I was flattered. I thought I was being recognized for my hard work. Mr. Harris praised me in meetings, looped me into big accounts, and said I was indispensable. But with that came staying late, almost every night. I'd be in the office until 9, sometimes 11, trying to meet expectations. Harris would casually say, "We'll make you partner level in no time." That kind of thing. Daniel used to pick me up from work, or we'd meet for dinner after. But once the late nights became consistent, I told him not to bother. I felt guilty wasting his time while I worked, and honestly, he didn't fight it. He just said okay, no problem, and stopped asking. I didn't think much of it at the time. But then, slowly, things at home started to change. He stopped greeting me when I came home. He was always on his phone or sitting on the couch with this far-off look in his eyes. He stopped initiating anything, conversation, affection, all of it. I chalked it up to the stress we were both under. I figured once this big campaign was over, we'd reset. One Thursday night, everything changed. What I saw made my body go completely numb. Right there, in the middle of the main conference room, with the blinds half drawn, was my husband, Daniel, standing close to Mr. Harris. And they weren't just talking. They were kissing. Deep, familiar, like they'd done it 1,000 times kind of kiss. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there. My brain literally could not process what my eyes were seeing. Daniel was holding Harris by the waist. Harris had his hand on Daniel's chest. Both of them were so wrapped up in it they didn't even notice me at first. Then I whispered, barely louder than a breath, "So this is why you never pick me up anymore." They jerked apart like they'd been electrocuted. Daniel turned first, eyes wide, like a deer caught in headlights. Harris took a step back, hands in the air like that would make it better somehow. This isn't," Harris started. "This won't affect your job," he blurted, like that was supposed to help. I laughed. It was a dry, sharp laugh that even surprised me. "Oh," I said. "It will. But not the way you think." Then I grabbed my keys off my desk and walked right out. Didn't say another word. Didn't even look back. Took the stairs all the way down to the street, hands shaking the entire way. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. I walked the streets until sunrise. Didn't cry. Couldn't cry. I just walked. Thinking. Trying to rewind every moment over the past year and figure out what I missed. That morning, I walked into HR with a folder of everything I had, emails from Harris, Slack messages, client schedules, receipts from all the overtime I never got paid for, calendar invites that showed how often I was held back in the office while Harris coincidentally left early. I didn't mention Daniel. That was personal. But I made it very clear that Harris used his position to manipulate my schedule, push me to stay late, and, whether he meant to or not, destroyed the boundary between professional and personal life. HR was frozen. They kept saying things like, "We take this seriously," and "Thank you for coming forward." I told them they'd better. I'd been keeping records for weeks, long before I ever saw anything physical. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know it was this. That's where I'm at right now. Trying to figure out what the hell comes next. I haven't told anyone else besides my best friend and HR. My parents don't know. Neither do Daniel's. It's eating me alive, keeping it in, but I'm not ready to face the full wave of it yet. I'm just stuck in this weird limbo. Angry. Humiliated. Confused. A little numb. And somehow still expected to go back to work next week like none of this happened. So, I went back home on the third night. Daniel was there. Sitting on the couch like nothing happened. Wearing the same hoodie he always wears when he's anxious. Like it was just a regular Friday. I didn't say anything. Just walked in, dropped my bag by the door, and went straight to the bedroom. I didn't even look at him. I couldn't. He followed me. "I want to explain," he said softly, standing in the doorway. "Please. Just let me." I turned around. "Explain what, Daniel? That my boss has been screwing you while I was killing myself to impress him?" But then he said something that made my stomach flip. He told me he loved me. I froze. "You've been in a relationship with him?" Daniel's laptop was open on the kitchen table. His email was pulled up. The same email account he never let me see. Something inside me clicked. I know it's wrong, but I couldn't stop myself. I sat down and looked. There it was. A folder labeled personal_2. I opened it. It wasn't just Harris. There were emails. Dozens of them. Some with attachments. Some with names I didn't recognize. Photos. Messages. Love notes. There were files dating back over a year, messages with men, videos, some of them explicit. Some in hotel rooms. One I recognized from our anniversary trip to Milwaukee. One file was a voice memo. I clicked it. It was Harris. "I can't believe she still doesn't know," he said, laughing. "You're lucky she's so obsessed with work. Makes this easier." I sat there, staring at the screen, numb. This wasn't just an affair. It was planned. They were laughing at me. Using me. Scheduling their meetups around my work hours. And I'd been the one apologizing for being too busy. Staying late. Getting pizza on the way home like a fool. I took photos of everything. Every file. Every message. I airdropped them to my phone. I didn't even know what I'd do with them yet, but I needed proof. Something real. Then I packed my suitcase and left. I didn't leave a note. I didn't text him. I just walked out. Back at work, things got even messier. HR called me in again. Apparently Harris hadn't just been inappropriate with me. They were looking into another complaint, this time from someone in accounting. A guy. Same pattern, late meetings, mentorship, blurred boundaries. This man had come forward after hearing about what happened with me. The company brought in an outside investigator. There were rumors flying around, whispers in break rooms, people pretending not to look at me when I passed by. And then another twist dropped. Turns out Harris had been using company funds to book hotel rooms. They found receipts linked to client budgets, but the hotels had nothing to do with business. Daniel was in those rooms. On the company's dime. My job's dime. I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I asked for a formal meeting with upper HR. I laid it all out, emails, photos, voice memos. Everything I'd found. The hidden folder. The stolen time. The fact that Harris orchestrated this entire situation under the guise of professional mentorship while actively using me as a cover. It was quiet in the room for a long time. My head is spinning. I don't even know what I want right now. I don't know if I want revenge or peace or closure. But I do know this, I'm not going to be quiet anymore. I thought the worst part was over. I thought after I exposed Harris and confronted Daniel, there would be space to breathe. But I was wrong. So wrong. 2 weeks after Harris was removed, things quieted down at work. HR kept me in the loop, but they weren't exactly eager to update me. They said legal was still reviewing. I knew they were stalling. Probably trying to protect the company. I kept showing up, doing my job, pretending like the ground hadn't just split under me. And then, last Monday, I got a message on Facebook. From a woman named Vanessa. I didn't recognize her at first. No mutual friends. Her message was short. Hi. I think we need to talk. It's about Daniel. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen for a full minute before replying. Who are you? She responded almost immediately. I'm his girlfriend. Or I thought I was. I didn't know he was married. We met on Hinge last summer. I swear the room tilted. I asked for proof. Screenshots. Photos. Anything. She sent me everything. There were texts, going back months. Photos of them at a concert. At a hotel in Michigan. On the same weekend he told me he was on a business trip in Seattle. She had no idea I existed. She said she only found out when she saw a tagged photo of Daniel from one of our old anniversary posts on a mutual friend's page. That's when she started digging. Found my name. Found the company I worked for. And finally found me. I felt like throwing up. Daniel had been juggling me, Harris, and her all at once. Like some kind of sick, disgusting magic trick. I didn't respond for a few hours. I just sat in silence. Then I did something I didn't think I'd do, I called her. We talked for almost 2 hours. She cried. I didn't. I was past tears. She told me things I didn't even want to know. That he talked about starting over, that he told her he was getting divorced soon. That she stayed at our condo once when I was on a business trip in New York. She slept in our bed. Wore one of my hoodies. Took photos in the mirror in our hallway. I saw the reflection of our wedding photo in the background. I saved everything she sent. I thanked her, and I meant it. She didn't owe me anything. She was betrayed too. That night, Daniel showed up at the condo. I hadn't seen him since I moved out. He must have known Vanessa had reached out. He knocked for 10 minutes before I finally opened the door. Now here's where things took another sharp turn. The next day, I got a call from a blocked number. It was Harris. I should have hung up. I didn't. He said he needed to clear the air. That he'd lost everything. That Daniel used him. Used him. This man, my boss, was now trying to play the victim card. He claimed Daniel told him we were already separated. That he had no idea he was getting in the middle of a marriage. I didn't believe him. Not for a second. But what he said next made my blood run cold. There are others, he said. Other men. Maybe women too. I don't know. He's not who you think he is. He offered to send me emails. Messages Daniel sent him, sharing private things. Screenshots. Voicemails. I told him to send it all. And he did. He wasn't lying. There were names I didn't recognize. Conversations with strangers. Explicit stuff. And one thread where Daniel talked about how easy it was to manipulate me. She thinks she's the boss of everything. But she has no clue. She eats whatever I feed her. I dropped my phone. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt nothing. Just a deep, hollow silence that filled my chest like smoke. I haven't told Daniel about the messages yet. I haven't told Vanessa either. Then, 2 weeks later, I got an unexpected email from HR. Subject line, urgent, request for meeting, they scheduled it for the next morning. No context. Just a time, a place, and a line at the bottom, this discussion is confidential and will involve legal counsel. I showed up, expecting something about the investigation wrapping up, maybe a final report or a forced NDA. What I didn't expect. A new face in the room. Her name was Janet. External legal. Brought in by the board. But here's the twist, they found evidence that someone else had helped him cover it up. Someone in HR. Someone who approved his travel. His expenses. Who kept scheduling me late on purpose while Daniel showed up on those nights. They didn't say the name out loud. But I recognized it at the top of one memo, Stephanie R. She was the HR liaison assigned to my department. Always quiet. Always neutral. Now suddenly on personal leave. This whole time, I thought Harris and Daniel were the worst of it. Turns out, it went deeper. After the meeting, I went back to my desk. I didn't know what to feel anymore. Betrayed? Used? Played? Again? That's when something even stranger happened. Someone slipped a USB drive onto my keyboard while I was in the break room. No note. Just a plain black USB stick. At first, I was going to toss it. But something told me to check. I plugged it in using an old laptop, just in case. The only folder on it was named, Start Here. Inside, a series of recordings. One of them was a video, clearly recorded without permission. It showed Daniel. In our condo. Talking to someone on speakerphone. I recognized the voice on the other end. Harris. In the call, they talked about getting the timing right, and keeping her on the hook until Q4. They were referring to me. Then Harris said, she's the glue that holds the place together. Once she's out, everything falls apart. Daniel replied, laughing. Yeah, and she still thinks you're promoting her. I watched the video 3 times. Hands clenched so tight they hurt. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They planned to push me out. Slowly. Strategically. And not just me. I started to understand. Harris was building something. A network. Favoritism. Manipulation. Control. And I was the test case. The next day, I confronted the only person I knew who might have given me that USB, David, a junior IT guy who always had headphones in and never talked unless necessary. He looked nervous when I approached him. Was it you? I asked. He paused, then nodded slowly. I couldn't take it anymore, he said. They were deleting things. Changing logs. I saved what I could. Turns out, David had been logging everything, backups, deleted files, redirected messages. He knew something shady was going on, but he didn't know who to trust. Until the investigation started. He told me Stephanie R. had a private folder hidden on the internal server. Labeled audits. Inside were altered timecards, redacted travel requests, and fake documentation to protect Harris. David saved it all. Now I'm sitting on a mountain of evidence. Proof of lies, cover-ups, manipulation, and not just personal. Legal violations. HR corruption. Corporate fraud. And the company? They still haven't taken public action. They're hoping to handle it internally. I'm not sure how long I can stay quiet. Every time I walk into that building, it feels like I'm standing in a house full of gas and someone's handing me matches. I haven't heard from Daniel since the last time he begged to talk things out. But I heard from Vanessa again. She said he's trying to start fresh with her. That he swears he's changed. I didn't have the heart to tell her the rest yet. Because the truth? I don't think she's the only one he's chasing right now. And I'm not sure she even knows she's next. This isn't over. Not even close. It all came to a head 3 weeks later. The company scheduled a full staff meeting, a mandatory operations update. Everyone was required to attend. Word spread fast that it had something to do with Harris, but nobody knew for sure. I wasn't planning on saying anything. I figured they'd handle it quietly, like always. But that morning, I walked in and saw Stephanie R. sitting in the front row, cool as ever, pretending like she hadn't helped cover up the biggest mess this company had seen. And something inside me snapped. The meeting started slow. A senior VP came out, droning on about compliance updates and internal reviews. People were fidgeting, half listening. Then came the bombshell: we've accepted the resignation of Mr. Harris, effective immediately. We will not be commenting on personnel matters further. Just like that. Sweep it under the rug. Again. I raised my hand. People turned. Some looked confused. Others, wide-eyed. The VP hesitated. Yes, he said. I stood up. I think the team deserves the truth, I said. My voice didn't shake. Not this time. This isn't just a personnel matter. This is about abuse of power, manipulation, fraud, and silence. Someone coughed. The room went dead silent. The VP tried to wave it off. This isn't the forum for, I cut him off. Oh, I think it is. Everyone here deserves to know what they were part of, whether they realized it or not. Late-night scheduling wasn't random. Promotions were traded for silence. And some people were used like pawns. I looked directly at Stephanie. Her face froze. Emails. Messages. Recordings. All of it exists, I said. And if this company doesn't address it now, I'll go public. I have everything. And I'm not afraid anymore. The VP's face turned pale. HR reps looked like they wanted to melt into the carpet. And then, Daniel stood up. I hadn't even seen him slip in through the side door. I think we should talk privately, he said, trying to keep his voice calm. Gasps. One woman from accounting looked like she was going to cry. Daniel didn't speak. He turned and walked straight out. Stephanie followed him, but not before HR called after her, loudly, in front of everyone. We'll need to speak with you immediately, one said. So much for personal leave. The room stayed quiet after they left. The VP tried to continue the meeting like nothing happened. No one listened. Afterward, people came up to me. Quietly. Some said they were proud. Others apologized for not noticing. One guy in IT said, I knew something was off, but I didn't know it was this bad. Vanessa texted me that night. I confronted him. He admitted it. I left. All she said. That was enough. The days after that were weird. Harris was gone. Daniel disappeared. Stephanie's name was removed from all company portals. HR promised a full external audit. But what hit hardest was the silence. The weird, hollow kind you feel in your bones. I moved out of the condo for good. Got a short-term lease in Logan Square. Started therapy. People kept asking, what now? And I didn't have an answer. Daniel sent one last email. Just a few lines. I'm sorry for everything. I don't expect forgiveness. You didn't deserve any of it. I hope one day you're okay. I didn't reply. I didn't hate him. I didn't miss him. I just didn't care anymore. And that, honestly, scared me the most. Betrayal doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. In meetings. In late-night texts. In skipped pickups and polite lies. I learned that being strong doesn't mean holding everything together. Sometimes being strong means letting it fall apart, on purpose. I lost a marriage. I almost lost my career. I found out just how easily people can lie when they think you're not paying attention. But I also found my voice. And now? I'm not hopeful. I'm not broken. I'm awake. And that's more than I had before.